Robert Spencer is with us. Robert, thanks for being with us today. Appreciate it, sir.
Hey, happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, sir. Tell us, what is we see what's happening and the politics and President Obama addressing the nation, telling everybody to calm down and do things peacefully. There seems to be a transition of power there. Robert, the religion. What's the theological thing going on underneath this story?
Well, the main thing is that the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the most powerful opposition group in Egypt, is poised to take power. They're in talks now to form a national unity coalition, and that would bring Islamic law to Egypt. And so theologically what that means is that they will rule according to what they believe is the law of God. And that law of God, Sharia, is something that institutionalizes discrimination against Christians and other non-Muslims as well as against women. And so the Christian community in Egypt, which has already been experiencing severe persecution, is under greater peril than ever.
You know what? Honestly, Robert, if I read one more story about Islamic persecution, I just read about 100 evangelicals that have been kidnapped in Iraq or Iran, I can't remember. It's just every single day more and more terror by Islam perpetrated on Christians. Is my observation correct that we are seeing an increase in violence against Christians?
Oh, no doubt about it. All across the Islamic world, there has been a sharp increase in 2010 and in the early weeks of 2011
what do you
in
suppose?
Persecution of Christians in Pakistan, Iraq, Egypt, all over.
Yeah, why do you think this is happening?
Well, I think that there are several reasons. One is that there is, as several Christian leaders in the Middle East have said, a concerted effort to do nothing less than drive the Christians out of the Middle East. And that is one of the main things going on. And then there are secondary pretexts, like this false accusation in Egypt that Coptic Christians kidnapped two Christian women who had converted to Islam and are holding them against their will. That story has circulated into Iraq and elsewhere in the Islamic world and been the stated cause by Islamic jihadists for attacks against Christians.
Yeah, it is escalating, and how this is ultimately going to play out, well, we'll find out in time. Let's just get back to Egypt with Robert Spencer of jihadwatch.org. Okay, Robert, the Islamic Brotherhood, who are these people, good guys, bad guys?
See, the thing about the democracy protesters in general in Egypt is that there are people who are simply fighting against oppression. The Mubarak regime is no friend of freedom. It is a repressive regime. And so there's perfectly good reason for reasonable people to be fighting against it. At the same time, because the Muslim Brotherhood is the most organized opposition group, it's in the best position to take power ultimately after the Mubarak regime is gone. And that will mean an Islamic State that will probably be, or almost certainly be, more repressive and authoritarian than the Mubarak regime itself.
Muslim Brotherhood. Are we talking Hamas, Hezbollah type of guys?
Yes. Hamas, as a matter of fact, says that that it is the branch of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. The Muslim Brotherhood started in Egypt and is still strongest in Egypt, but it is an international organization that operates in the United States as well. And so it cannot be understated, its influence. But at the same time, we have to recognize that while it does have ideological kinship to groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, at the same time it also operates in stealthy ways that are not violent. And that's what makes a lot of people think, oh, this is a harmless, moderate group. But its goal is the same in all cases, and that is ultimately the imposition of Islamic law.
All right. If you would be so kind, Robert Spencer, let us get a little understanding of what Egypt is like, let's say a week ago, 2 weeks ago. We know what it feels like in America, basically two parties. You've got this thing called the Tea Party right now that seems to be growing in popularity. We understand who's in power. We understand our freedoms, what it's like to walk around. In Egypt, pre-revolt days, just from the last few days, we see on TV that it's predominantly Islamic there, but is it peaceful? Did I have rights? How are the women treated? I see most of the men in the videos. They look like they shop at the Gap, frankly. What was life like a week ago in Egypt?
Well, a week ago in Egypt, there was a lot of dissatisfaction with the regime, but it really was touched off by the events in Tunisia and the successful toppling of the dictator there, Ben Ali, led the opposition in Egypt to think now is the time to step up. Egypt is certainly not a first world nation, and it is not one of the world's most prosperous nations,
four
but
people
nonetheless,
are dead.
it is one in which people are starving
this
to death,
is a
and
minority
one in
of
which they have
Egyptians.
enjoyed relative prosperity. The resentment
US
against
consider
the
Egypt to be
Mubarak
a key
regime
ally in the
is
Middle
based
East,
primarily
so unrest
on
is unwelcome.
the clampdown on political opposition,
But Hillary
the
Clinton, the
authoritarian
US
character
Secretary
of
of
the regime,
State,
and also, quite unfortunately,
the
one of the
demonstrators
recurring
want
things
liberty
in the
from the
statements of the
president.
protesters
So far,
has been
over
they're angry with
700
Mubarak
have been
because
detained.
he's not at war with Israel. Because of the Camp David Accord, Egypt has maintained an uneasy peace with Israel. And a lot of the protesters are upset about that precisely because they are Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic supremacist types who believe that there is a perpetual state of war between the Islamic world and the Jews, and that Egypt is wrong not to be fighting it.
Robert Spencer, jihadwatch.org. Robert, is it fair to say that what we are seeing played out on our TV screens right now is a microcosm of what we would call progressive Muslims, which I think are actually just bad Muslims, but they're not real followers of the Quran, versus what we're being told today are the radical Islamists. Is that a fair characterization of what's happening right now in Egypt?
Well, sort of. The thing is that the elements of Islam that lead Muslims to do things that are considered radical in the West are elements that are taught in the Quran and the basic teachings of the religion. And so there are a lot of Muslims who aren't putting those teachings into practice, just as there are a lot of Christians who don't turn the other cheek and love their enemies. But these things are still taught in Islam. And so it's not really as if there is some other form of Islam that doesn't teach that Muslims should wage war against unbelievers and subjugate them.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page on that, but you know how we're being told there are peaceful Muslims, there are progressive Muslims, and then there's these really radical bad guys, which you and I think, agree are just really good followers of the Quran. But even so, let's go with their terminology. Are we seeing a war between progressive Islam and terrorist Islam?
No, I wouldn't think so. I think that it's not really possible to characterize it as a war. There isn't even any open conflict. There isn't even any rhetoric.
Are there any peaceful Muslims fighting
the
for
Islamic
peace?
jihadis present themselves as being the exponents of true and pure Islam. And the moderate peaceful Muslims don't really have the theological comeback to make on that score. They don't really say anything in response. They just go along. And so, in other words, they don't resist actively the Islamic jihadis. This is the big thing. For years now I've been reading innumerable stories written by non-Muslim Western analysts saying it's time for moderate Muslims to stand up and speak out against terrorism and extremism in their community. And it's been time for years. We never see it. And we never see it because the moderate peaceful Muslims know that terrorists have the texts and teachings of Islam on their side. They're not going to stick their neck out and be called heretical and subject themselves to distance.
Okay, so we see, if you will, the peaceful Muslims in Egypt versus the terrorist Muslims. And the peaceful Muslims, they really aren't doing anything to reform their religion, are they?
That's right. Nothing whatsoever.
And furthermore, when we use the word they need to reform their religion, the reality is Islam needs to be reformed for the first time because the true followers of it really are the bad guys.
Yeah. That's really, unfortunately, the case. But this is the thing. When you read the Quran, when you read the life of Muhammad, when you read Islamic law, the more you put things into practice, the things that are taught in them, then the more you will become violent, intransigent, and hateful. And so this is an unfortunate fact that nobody wants to admit, but read the book and tell me if I'm wrong.
Right, with that in mind, Robert Spencer, jihadwatch.org. We're not a political show, but even so, I'm curious to know your take on the response of President Obama, what our Secretary of State has been saying. Has it really addressed the core issue, or has it just been kind of political doublespeak?
Yeah, it's just been all platitudes. It's been platitudes about democracy and so on. It's all nice-sounding. It all sounds wonderful, but it's completely sidestepped the issue of the Muslim Brotherhood involvement and the implications of that for the United States and the West. What the problem we got with Obama is that he has been cozying up to elements like the Muslim Brotherhood for years now. And we shouldn't forget that when he made his major speech about Islam in Cairo in June 2009, he specifically invited Muslim Brotherhood leaders to attend. And this was, remember, an outlaw group in Egypt that Obama specifically said he wanted the leaders there.
No one knows for
and now
sure.
he's going to turn around
We
and
do know thousands more have been wounded since it all began on Tuesday, a day the opposition called the Day of Ra.
Their
anger has been fueled by repression, poverty, corruption, but most of all by their president, who they believe has been robbing the country blind for 30 years.
All right, Robert, I'm going to ask you to prognosticate a little bit on the future.
And it was the young who were the original engines of this
I think especially in America, we tend to think, well, no, people don't take over nations, and Islam isn't going to take over. That type of thing doesn't happen anymore.
On Arab satellite television as
History
these
does not
kids
stop
took on the
marching
police on the first day.
In the past, we've seen guys like Charles Martel
on day two,
resist
out came the civil
Islamic
servants,
courts,
the women,
drive
the
them
unemployed,
away.
and the Islamists.
But these days,
they
Robert,
were united
I
in their
fear that
goal
because
to
of
get rid of
postmodernism.
Mubarak. He's
I
been
don't
hanging
know
on to
how
power by
the
hook
tide
and,
of
as the
Islamic
Egyptians would say, by
aggression,
crook for
whether
30
it's subvert
years.
or overt,
A staunch ally in
I
the
don't know
Middle
how
East
the
of 6 U.S.
tide can be
presidents,
pushed back.
from Jimmy
Do you?
Carter through Ronald Reagan
Yeah,
and Bill
you're
Clinton,
quite right. I don't know
Bush
that
the
we really
father
have
and the
the
son.
cultural
I'm not leaving,
wherewithal
says this man,
to
until
mount some
Mubarak
kind
is
of
wiped
effective
off the
resistance
face
at
of
this
the
point.
earth. But if they
Especially
win,
because
and
the
Mubarak
problem
does
itself
go,
is not
then
properly
what?
diagnosed. The problem
For the moment, the
itself
Army is trying to hold things together.
Being ignored,
In a message broadcast on state TV, the generals promised that they wouldn't use violence against the protesters. And soldiers are keeping the peace as best
now,
they
Robert,
can.
last question for
But
you,
that
sir.
can only be
There
a
are some
temporary
people on
measure.
radio that I heard
At some
recently, and I'm
point,
not going to name
someone is
Jason
going
Lewis's
to have
name,
to
but
take
he thinks you're
political
kind
control.
of
But
you're
right
kind of
now,
a knee-jerk
there's no
reactionary
clear
guy.
plan.
You're overstating
All
things.
Egypt
What would you
is
say to?
holding its
Let's say
breath.
it were Jason.
I'd say, look at Iran. In Iran, in 1979, it was a pro-democracy movement, and everybody was happy that the authoritarian Shah was toppled. And then the Islamic supremacists took over and instituted a regime that was far worse than the Shah's. And I would say it happened then. The same thing is unfolding now in Egypt. And just check back with me in a year, and we'll see who is being alarmist.
And what do you think is going to be? What is it going to look like in a year?
Like Iran.
The end.
Yeah.
And the implications for us living in the United States are?
Well, there'll be war with Israel, war between Egypt and Israel. And whatever we do in that regard, and I'm not sure that we're a reliable ally for Israel anymore, but whatever we do in that regard will have tremendous impact on our national security, because if Israel falls, the Islamic jihadists will be even bolder in their actions against the United States.
All righty, sir. If God lets the world spin for another year, we will find out. Robert Spencer, jihadwatch.org. As always, we are grateful, sir. Stay safe.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Guy's got a duck when he goes out in public. He isn't the most popular guy in Islam, needless to say. Well, I don't know what it's going to look like in a year. Oh, well, time will tell what it is going to look like in 1 year. But we see what is happening right now. This is not a political thing that is happening. Islam is never merely a political thing. It's that combination that I think we in the West have a very difficult time understanding, and that is the blending of Islam and state. I think people in the old days in Europe, they understood that blending of church and state. Why we in the West don't understand that Islam is as much political as it is religion, and until you address the religion, the political is going to be a disaster. This is Wretched Radio.